Good morning, my beautiful people out there. Welcome back to Sun Upon 7. Just before the break, we had very spicy Tuesday morning tacos with Jules. Stay tuned to tonight's news because it will be even spicier. But we're jumping into our first conversation this morning, and we're here joined with Mr. David Nicholas Ruiz, who is an educator and cultural activist, and we're here discussing the life and legacy of the Honorable George Cadle Price. Good morning, Mr. Ruiz. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me as part of the conversation.
Yes, it is a very important conversation. This is the father of our nation. So let's educate our people a bit about who George Cadle Price was.
Okay, George Cadle Price, I guess everybody has in some way heard about George Price. He was born in 1919, that was last century, January 15. He passed away precisely on September 19, we celebrated that, his passing yesterday. And George Price was lived through a period marked by the onslaught of the Spanish flu, the World Wars, the Great Depression, which exacerbated the social and economic backwardness of Belize, back then British Honduras. He had a very Christian upbringing at home and school. And he decided to enter the seminary, engage studies in the priesthood, and it didn't work out. So he came back home and helped his father and went into politics. And then we know the story, that the evolution of his political career, which led to him spearheading the movement for Belize's independence.
All right.
So, Mr. Ruiz, can you tell us, for maybe our young viewers, I love to educate them, especially around when you talk about the father of our nation, what would be some of the attributes or the contributions directly that you feel George Cadle Price, Right Honorable George Cadle Price, has left for our nation to follow when it comes to the political realm, when it comes to giving service? What do you think are some of the things that he has left behind in his legacy that we are to follow?
Well, we have focused precisely on his political career. I mean, the biographies that there have been 3 attempts at writing biographies, and Godfrey Smith has been claimed to be his official biographer. And when we read about the life of George Price, we tend to focus more on the history of the People's United Party, the People's Committee, and then the PUP, and the move to self-government and independence. But I believe that most of these writings kind of sacrifice and don't do justice in the sense of what Price really was as a person. I believe that in essence, his character, his personality, his spirituality kind of fed the social activist he was. I believe that he was the social activist par excellence. Having achieved for Belize universal adult suffrage back in 1954, the full ministerial system in 1961, self-government 1964, and independence 1981. But we should remember, as I was listening to the show, that back in the 50s, in the 1950s, in the 20th century, I mean, Belize as a colony was really in social backwardness, in economic backwardness. So for George Price to take on the reins and come face to face with an imperial government to say no, it was kind of mighty for a person who had gone to study for the priesthood, come back and start this grassroots movement that Antonio Soberan is, and all what he did, he picked up on that and led us into independence. So I feel that's very powerful, for somebody as George Price.
It is powerful indeed. I mean, it seems like every year you go and you learn something new about him. And I'm seeing the footage now that's playing on the screen. Amazing footage again, but it just goes to show the level of admiration people had for him from back then as well. And I mean, hearing about the ticker tape parade now, that is something I just learned today. Right. Such an incredible man to have stood up to. What is the head of our nation as is right now?
I know, especially when you're thinking about, we put into real life context right now for modern days, and when the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, the first thing people went to when it came to who's going to go on our money, everybody's like, the father of our nation, let George Price go on the money. Like the admiration, the respect that people want to see him live on, his legacy, every single thing, what he stands for, these are the things that people, they shoot for when it comes to Belize. And so, Mr. Ruiz, as we're wrapping up this segment, what would be your last words given to Belizeans, especially now when we're thinking about September, when we're thinking about George Cadle Price? What do you want them to always remember when it comes to his legacy?
I think more than very interesting that at the funeral, the committal ceremonies back in at his funeral 11 years ago, the then Prime Minister Barrow said that Belize, the PUP will never have a leader as George Price. As a matter of fact, Belize may never have a leader as Prime Minister as George Price. Well, I tend to agree and disagree at the same time. I mean, George Price was a man par excellence in his spiritual life, in his as a social activist. But I think more than anything, we are called to emulate and follow that legacy.
Yeah.
And if we do, I believe we can have very great leaders and greater leaders than George Price. It's just a matter of commitment, no? It's, I guess, one of the biggest attributes of George Price, as we talk about in theology, is his kenosis, meaning the self-emptying of this man to give himself as gift for others. And I believe we are all called to do that, to empty ourselves and give ourselves as gifts in the service of our nation and our people. And I would like to end, if you allow me, by quoting precisely yesterday at the interment ceremonies of the late Queen Elizabeth II, the sermon given by the Bishop of Canterbury. And I quote, he said, "People of loving service are rare in any walk of life. Leaders of loving service are still rarer, but in all cases, those who serve will be loved and remembered when those who cling to power and privileges are forgotten." And I guess that's what we are doing for George Price at this point, no?
Definitely.
Remembering him and we cannot afford to forget his story. And more than that, when we relive the story, we are calling upon his spirit of George Price to empower us as a nation and as a people.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Mr. Ruiz.
I don't think there's any better way to leave off and remind all our viewers, young, old, everyone, that maybe this first time they're hearing the name for some reason, but to leave off with that legacy. So thank you again so much, Mr. Ruiz. And with that, we go to our next commercial break, and we'll be right back.